Welcome back to the world of Debussy and the richly cultured world of Paris in the years preceding World War I. Debussy wrote the 12 preludes of Book 1 in about 9 weeks. The compositions were mostly 3 to 4 minutes long, and they give us an idea of the images and ideas that were circulating at the time in newspapers, books, magazines, and conversations. As the modern world began to impose a mass urban culture on Parisians, Debussy was increasingly attracted to sources of mystery. Remote cultures, timeless myths, and nature were the things that inspired him to write these preludes. A particular visual or literary stimulus was the stepping-off point to be fleshed out with his unique musical sensibility. He was writing music that had never before been imagined. Fortunately for his public, Debussy gave each of his preludes a name, although he playfully placed the name at the end of the piece and in parentheses. We're glad to have these titles. The images pull us directly into the music. I spoke last time about the desirability of hearing all 12 of the preludes in one sitting. Debussy's key relationships and dramatic flow provide a lot of aesthetic pleasure. But in our current format, I'm going to be filling you in on the sources of inspiration for each of the preludes, so we'll be stopping before each one. Also, I've chosen performances by different pianists. Many of you might prefer the more current video performances, but in some cases I've felt that an earlier performance would serve the music better. There's such a big difference in how our senses respond to pure music heard on the radio or record player, as opposed to multimedia presentations with visuals or live musical performances. In 1910, Debussy placed a piece of violently virtuosic music at the center of his 12 preludes. If you joined me last time when we covered the first 7 preludes, we concluded with What the West Wind Saw. Today I'm going to begin with another performance of this amazing prelude because it sets the stage for what will follow in the remainder of Book 1. A Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale gave Debussy the idea of personifying the powerful west wind that blows off the Atlantic Ocean onto the coast of France. Debussy imagines it as an awe-inspiring, malevolent, and destructive being, gazing down at the devastation that it's causing. Debussy's extraordinary ear for sound enabled him to translate impressions of a ferocious windstorm into a pianistic idiom. You heard Richter play this most physically demanding of Debussy's works last time. Here's a young Moroccan pianist, Noor Ayadi, playing it more recently. I would have loved to hear her playing this on a 9-foot piano. The next prelude is one of Debussy's most accessible and beloved pieces. Many of you will have heard it or even played it. Your piano teacher might have told you that The Girl with the Flaxen Hair is based on a 19th century French poem about a young girl with long blonde hair and lips like cherries who sings in her garden in the cool of the morning. This is indeed the maiden that Debussy longed for when he was 20 and set that poem to music. But now Debussy is almost 50, and any idealization of pastoral bliss and naivete can only be experienced as bittersweet. The nostalgic music that Debussy wrote for this prelude has a deeper meaning. He uses the title Girl with the Flaxen Hair as a symbol of his past idealism and lost innocence. I love this performance by the Icelandic pianist Vikingur Olafsson, but I do feel the videography takes us a long way from Debussy's world. At this point in a complete performance of the Preludes, Debussy correctly judged that it was time for a bit of humor. The prelude is called The Interrupted Serenade, and it takes place in an exotic Spanish setting. The guitar had been brought to Spain by the Moors in the Middle Ages, and it became Spain's most characteristic instrument. Debussy uses Arabic-sounding scales, guitar-like figurations, and Iberian-style dance tunes. But what really catches our attention in this prelude is the idea of an interrupted serenade. Our serenader seems to be part of a street scene where his ongoing attempts to express himself are continually thwarted by intrusions. To construct this piece, Debussy used a very modern technique, juxtaposing musical fragments in a collage. You can also liken this type of composing to cinematic splicing, where you can jump from one frame to something completely different without any transition. The evident irritation of the serenader is meant to be comical, but Debussy is also sympathetic to the frustration of artists trying to create sustained beauty in complex and changeful settings. The only pianist I could find who really captured the guitar idiom as well as the psychology of the struggling serenader was the American pianist Paul Jacobs. There's a French legend that originated on the coast of Brittany. At sunrise, looking out over the ocean, you can sometimes see and hear what remains of a sunken cathedral. The ancient city of Ys was engulfed in ancient times because of the wickedness of its inhabitants. But now and then the cathedral rises briefly from the sea. Its great bells toll, the organ can be heard, and the cathedral's wet stone walls can be imagined. Debussy portrays this mystical scene with unforgettable intensity, evoking timelessness, vast seascapes, and the motion of waves. Bells sound in every register of the piano. The modal melodies of plain chant rise in swelling grandeur, first ornamented in bare fifths and later in chains of parallel chords full of sumptuous overtones. Finally, the edifice slowly sinks back into the sea. The engulfed cathedral is the longest of Debussy's preludes at about 7 minutes. It's performed here by Dominic Piers Smith, who also designs race cars for Mercedes-Benz. Debussy was the father of a 7-year-old girl when he was completing Book 1 of the Preludes. Little Shushu was the recipient of many toys and books, and Debussy enjoyed them at least as much as his daughter. Arthur Rackham's illustrations for Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream were favorite images, especially pictures of mischievous Puck. Puck is the servant of Oberon, king of the fairies, and you'll probably remember Puck as the prankster who incorrectly administered love potions, setting into motion the action of Shakespeare's play. Puck can fly and vanish into space with a flap of his wings. He mimics voices, turns somersaults, laughs and crashes into things unharmed. He can be serious for a moment, but quickly resumes his teasing. As you listen to Puck's antics in this prelude, you'll occasionally hear the horn of Oberon. Oberon tries to summon Puck or to restore order, but poor Oberon is usually ignored by his tricky elf. Here is an early recording of young Richter playing The Dance of Puck in Moscow in 1956. Debussy decided to complete Book 1 of his Preludes with a final touch of humor. It's another character sketch, like the earlier interrupted Serenade and the Dance of Puck. The source of exoticism this time is the early 19th century American South, with its traditional minstrel shows. Today, these are looked down on, but in Debussy's time, they were a source of fascination for Europeans. Minstrelsy originated when white plantation owners made up in blackface staged theatrical pieces imitating the songs, dances, and mannerisms of their slaves. While racial stereotyping was always the predominant theme of these performances, African Americans still formed their own minstrel shows in order to cash in on their popularity. It was through minstrel shows that African Americans promoted the innovations of Black culture, such as ragtime and jazz. Over the years, the minstrel genre evolved into the type of fast-paced performance that we now associate with vaudeville. Jokes, slapstick, and pantomime were blended with music and dance. Debussy saw his first minstrel show when he and Emma Bardak were on holiday in England in 1905. The minstrel troupe was performing on a sidewalk at the beach. Debussy had always loved Paris's circuses, puppet shows, and music halls. He now added his keen observations of the minstrel show to create a collage of all these types of popular entertainment. In this prelude, we can imagine a high-stepping dandy tiptoeing onto the stage, a little nervous and eager to please. He'll do anything for a laugh. We again hear contemporary music fragments, a hand-cranked barrel organ, a piano roll, a soldier's military drum, and a corny sing-along ballad. Frequent and unexpected changes of key add to the constant surprises. The piece hangs together because of its wit and skillful timing. In a complete performance of the Preludes, this is a perfect ending and a final tribute to the travails of an artist currying the favor of the public. The young French pianist is François Dumont. I hope you've enjoyed this exploration of Debussy's Preludes, Book 1, and that you've gained a few new ideas about one of the most original composers that ever lived. It was always Debussy's intention to compose 24 preludes in 2 books. In the second book, you can hear how Debussy's friendship with Stravinsky led to more experiments with bitonality and ever more scandalous juxtapositions. There are further excursions to sites of mystery and abandoned beauty, as well as comic glimpses of Debussy's contemporary world. The Preludes Book 2 await us if you're game.